Good morning, Lucy. How are you?
Good morning, James. I'm very good. How are you?
Good stuff. I'm very well, very well. Super excited about this conversation. I've been looking forward to this episode for some time now, to really kind of chat to you about your whole entire journey from
Cool.
childhood and
Oh,
what
all
the
the way back.
drivers were to set up Mazuma all the way
All
back.
the way back.
No, fantastic. Well, look, to open up, it would be good for those that do not know you, if you wouldn't mind just give a bit of an overview on yourself, and then we could get into a bit more of a conversation from there.
Yeah, sure. So if you don't know me, my name's Lucy. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Mazuma. We were the first ever subscription-based accounting service, which doesn't sound all that revolutionary right now, but back in the dark ages of 2006, that really was quite a revolutionary thing to do. So we were the first to do that model and then have grown over the years. So we have been around for over 18 years now, coming up 19 years now, and have obviously seen a lot of change during that time. The industry's gone from being a very kind of analog paper-based system through to being much more kind of cloud and digitally focused. And we've gone on that journey. So we've grown, we're developing our own technology platform, and we're looking to scale the business really rapidly. So I suppose that's a very positive history of Mazuma.
No, perfect context setter there. Thank you very much, Lucy. Well, look, I think this is going to sound very Stephen Bartlett-esque in terms of the way he sets up his podcast, but I think it's really, really important for those that will be listening to this episode to understand a kind of your background and childhood and the real drivers behind why you set up Mazuma and specifically concentrate on the clientele that you do at the moment. So, could you take us back there, please?
Yeah, sure. Let's go into all of the childhood trauma. I don't come from a business family. I don't come from even an office job family. My family are all creatives, so actors, dancers, musicians. And growing up, so obviously it was a crushing disappointment when I went into accountancy as a proper job. So growing up, I very much lived that life of we didn't have any money. So, and it's a gig economy, right? So you starving artists, you're famously not paid that much, but you do it for the passion and the love. And grew up in that world where I saw people being self-employed, doing tax returns, struggling financially, feeling that pain as a kid, seeing that January stuff of kind of and it always really stung because my birthday's in January. So it was always like, well, we don't know what.
Same here.
Yeah, it
Same
sucks.
here.
Like it's after Christmas and Hanukkah, and it's your and then there's a tax bill. So like always suffered with, well, you don't have a present list because we don't know what the tax bill's going to be. And
Yeah.
so when I grew up and went into I actually worked. I thought I wanted to work in media, and I did about a year and a half working in film and TV before I had a place at university to study. And actually, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. So it's not kind of glamorous, and it was very much spending 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, stood in wet fields in Wales. I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. This is not how I want to spend my life. And again, the financial uncertainty that came with it. So the lack of know when your next paycheck is, that was obviously had really kind of affected me as a kid, and I just didn't like that uncertainty. So when I finished my AAT, and then at that point I was working at kind of council, and I'd had a secondment to do an SAP implementation, so big software project change. And that's where I really, I think, got the bug for that change management piece, the impact of change, taking people on that journey, working with people who really hate change, getting them to kind of, it's sales, isn't it? Like selling the new world to them, selling, but doing it in a change management space. That was really attractive to me. And I'd come up with this idea for Mazuma, and my secondment was coming to an end, at which point I was going to have to go back to a far more poorly paid, much more boring job in the council. I just thought, I don't want to do this. Like, I would rather create something. So I was 23 at the time, and with all the wisdom of a 23-year-old, like, great, I'll just quit my job and it'll be fine, it'll work out. And it did. I had this idea about the idea of setting up a subscription service wasn't a deliberate business strategy. It was literally answering a need for myself. I wanted to know what money I had coming in every month. That was it. So
Going back to that certainty piece.
I wanted that certainty. If I have, here are my costs. if I have X number of clients paying me X amount of money and it takes me X amount of time to do each of their books every month, that means that this is what my life's going to look like. And I wanted to build that, and um, inadvertently created a subscription model with unit economics and GP margins and a manufacturing business model underneath it, kind of by accident. It was just through necessity being the mother of all inventions. I had to pay my rent. I didn't want to be with no money, so I had to work damn hard to make sure I wasn't, and that's how Mazuma came about essentially, and it grew from there.
And how, in those early days, that subscription model, selling that to your new clients that hadn't really come across that before,
Yeah.
what was the initial reaction?
So from the industry, for the accounting industry, my name was Mud. So not only was I new in here, not only did I not come from a practice background, but I was disrupting things. I cannot tell you in the modern world, I'd have made a fortune making YouTubes about this if it was today. The hate that I got back in those early days was unbelievable. The things that were said the about Mazuma and about me. Um,
Yeah.
uh, uh, you know, really thinking about it back then, and I'm thinking about the dynamics of this. I was a 23-year-old woman going into this space. If I look at it now through the lens of 2025, it's tantamount to bullying what happened to me during those
Yep.
early years from a
I can imagine.
certain demographic of incumbent accountants who just did not like the disruption. You've got to have pretty thick skin to deal with that at the time. So the reaction there was not great. And then the reaction from business owners was initially kind of like, well, that's a great idea. Oh, I can't believe everyone doesn't do that. And then, of course, they go and speak to their existing accountant or somebody else, and they come back with suspicion because, of course, that's the seed that's being laid. Well, if it's such a great idea, why isn't everyone else doing it? Well, I can't tell you that. I don't know why, because it seems so obvious to me that this is a good way of doing things, specifically in that market. So the market we deal with and still do deal with is typically really underserved by the rest of the industry. And it is the dashboard filing system of a van type client. In the early days, it was put everything into a purple envelope and post it to us, and we'll do all your bookkeeping from there.
Old school accounting, a bag of
Proper bag of
receipts.
receipts,
Yeah.
but we systemized it. So instead of leaving it, all of this is about taking control of a situation. Instead of leaving it to somebody else to decide when they were going to bring us to work and have an uncertain billing cycle and an uncertain work cycle, we systemized it into, we want you to send your stuff in regularly. Here's a mechanism to do it. Here's kind of overcoming all those objections. Well, I've got a visit every month. No, 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 put it in this envelope. All that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was met with, first of all, kind of, oh, that's such a great idea. Why doesn't everyone do it? And then followed by, well, why doesn't everyone do it? Surely if it's that good an idea and a 23-year-old woman can't possibly be thinking up something this game changing, this can't be real. It's bound to fail. Yeah, nearly 19 years later, here we are. And actually now that subscription model is ubiquitous. Everyone uses it.
Almost a norm, right?
Yeah,
For
the norm.
most accountants
And
now.
we started that. That was our thing.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And as you said, even from a consistency point of view, for you guys as an accountancy firm, that income's coming in. But equally now it's viewed upon for the clients. They know what they're paying their accountant every month. They're not going to get a large bill
Yeah.
at the end of the year that you've got to argue over, or it's come at a wrong time for them.
It builds certainty in an industry where, if you're working with small businesses and entrepreneurs, it builds a level of certainty in a space where everything's uncertain. So if you have certainty over being able to access financial advice, and also you know what your bill's going to be, that's a much nicer space to be in than the alternative.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to go back to that adversity that you kind of mentioned, alluded to there. Obviously, as a disruptor, you're always going to go against the grain. But as you picked up on, the accountancy industry was male dominated and
Yeah,
still to a certain degree is now. The dial was
yeah,
changing on that. But you've certainly been a very passionate flag bearer of women in business,
yeah.
women in the accountancy practice market. I know you're super, super passionate about that. So could you share some of those maybe examples that in those early days and throughout your career that you have seen how to come up against and how you've dealt with that?
Yeah, I've got a really good one. So when it was in the early days of kind of starting the business, and we knew that the sorts of clients we dealt with were not target market for a lot of the firms. So I did, put my little marketing hat on and did by the way, absolutely not qualified in any of this. Like, I don't know how to do I didn't know how to do marketing. I was just guessing. Like, well, let's write to every local accounting firm and say, have you got any work? Like, the work that you don't want to do, subcontract it to us, and we'll get that done for you as a way to kind of build revenue. So I've written to a bunch of local firms, and nothing really. And when we're talking writing because email marketing was not really a thing in 2006. So proper wrote a letter and picked up the phone and followed it up. I had a firm invite me in. It was like, yeah, we'd love to talk to you. I'm like, oh my God, brilliant. And it was a firm around the corner from me. I don't think they're there anymore. I suspect maybe they've all died. But that invited me around the corner from where I lived. I was like, fantastic. So off I went, kind of with my folders and going to have this conversation. And it was 3 senior guys in this room and me. I sat down at this desk and they basically spent 45 minutes telling me off. So they brought me into their office to sit me down and tell me why what I was doing was terrible. And, Lucy now would have had a lot to say about that, but I don't think they'd have invited Lucy now into that room. But I just look back at that, and the time you do what as a woman you're taught to do, which is to kind of laugh it off and pacify and and walk on eggshells and keep the situation calm. You don't get into a shouting match. It was just a kind of a pacifying exercise. I left that room feeling so disheartened, like so low. But also, I look back at that now and I think, what a awful thing to do. First of all, who's got time? Like, who's got time to do that? Like, why would you think you do that? Like, what if you're running an actual business? Like, who's got time to do that? Like, if you don't like what someone's doing, just let them, leave them alone. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
affect you. Just scroll on by in modern parlance. Just leave it alone. But to invite somebody in for a meeting under false pretenses and then basically have a go at them for 45 minutes to an hour, I just look back at that and go, that was unbelievable. Like the audacity of that, the privilege of that, to stand there in their room, and the kick they must have got out of it. Like, oh, I know.
Oh no, absolutely. You can imagine the conversation afterwards when you left the room. You can imagine the conversation afterwards.
It's just gross. It's absolutely gross. Yeah, so that's, one example. There's other kind of what I call softer stuff, but like, people asking me, is it my dad's company?
Right.
People asking
Yeah.
me more recently, when we were looking at round of investment, one investment fund I spoke to, the guy I had a meeting with initially, basically said, well, we're going to invest money in you. Aren't you just going to go off and have a baby? Like, what happens then? And I ended the conversation. I was like, yeah, I'm not carrying on. And he was shocked that I didn't carry that conversation on. He didn't understand why that was not a thing to ask. I said, well, would you have asked a guy my age that question? And he kind of like, he's like, well, yeah, of course I would have. I'm like, no, you wouldn't have. You would never have thought to ask a man that question, a man in his early 40s. You'd never have thought to ask that, because you'd assume that, first of all, if he does decide to have a family, someone's taking care of that. But secondly, you wouldn't have assumed it has any impact on his ability to drive business growth. So yeah. So and that's just a few examples. There's also kind of the underlying stuff, just the constant being the only woman in the room. Through most of my career, it is shifting now in the last couple of years, but through most of my career, I've been the only woman in the room. And whilst you might think, well, big deal, like, doesn't matter. Actually, to be the only of your type in a room, and if you're a woman or a person of color or a minority of any sort, you know what that feels like, because you're there thinking, I don't share a lived experience with a bunch of these people. When they're all talking about the golf course or some of the rooms I've been in, the strip club they were at, when they're all talking about that stuff, I'm like, I'm not relating to that. Like, I've never been invited on. I've been in business nearly 20 years. I've never been invited on a golf day. So, it's a world that I don't live in, and that women are often excluded from. So, being the minority in a room, it's exhausting. It is constantly, because you're not starting at the start line, the race with everybody else. You've had to run yourself to the arena and jump a bunch of hurdles before you even get to start line. Before you even get to start line, you are tired. And then everyone else is running that race with a bunch of energy, and somehow you're expected to be better than, because as a woman in business, you have to be better than your male counterparts just to be invited into the same rooms. I'm
That
ranting now, but yeah, it's wild, absolutely wild.
no, and Lucy, that point, personally, I can't resonate with it. Look, I'm a white male, and I've had that privilege, but also equally, I've got very many peers of mine, and my best friend is like a brother to me. He's Nigerian, and I never really understood that discrimination that
Yeah,
he used to witness through. And I've seen it just by moving with him. When we used to have business meetings
yeah,
or we'd go to meetings, the people would address me and talk to me and kind of ignore him
yeah.
to a certain degree.
Sucks.
I mean, even silly things like jumping in the cab,
Yeah,
that he jumped in the cab beforehand, the cab drivers, mate, can you pay up front, please, where
yeah.
you're going? And then I jump in straight afterwards. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll pay on the other side. It's like little
And
subtle
it's
things.
they're microaggressions, right? But
Mm.
if you're experiencing, you're living that day to day constantly, and that is it means you live your life in a constant state of fight or flight, because you're constantly waiting for the next thing to happen to have to prove yourself. You can't just move through life easily. Like, the bandwidth it takes up just to survive is absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
really and obviously I can't relate to that. I have white skin, so I'm not moving through the world like a person of color is. But yeah, the bandwidth it takes just to do that is just incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as you kind of mentioned as well, you have to work harder. You have to work harder than everyone else in the room.
Yeah.
So I always ask myself this question here because so where did that innate, just pure determination of F all of this going on, I'm going to carry on my mission. Where does that come from? Is that within you, or is that something that's built up into you as you come across these scenarios and situations that you encountered?
I think you become more resilient. So every encounter that you have, and you realize you survive it, you become more resilient, and a bit of your brain goes, "Oh no, I can do that." So I always joke about how I wish I had last year's problems, because they're a breeze compared to what I'm going through this year. So it's that you're building up your resilience to it. It's like you and I both hit the gym. It's like weight training. What was a heavy weight a year ago is suddenly your warm up weight now. It's that kind of incremental gains, those tiny little gains that that whilst you're doing it, you don't realize you're making the gain, and then suddenly you can rep a weight for 10 that you can only do for one a year ago. That like it just sort of happens. However, it sucks that you have to end up going through your life being that resilient.
Yeah.
I'm an innately stubborn person. um I I like having my own way. um and also I know that I'm capable. So I live in these I straddle these two very strange places, I suppose, mentally. So I've talked very publicly before. I've suffered with anxiety and depression over my life. So I sit in these two spaces where, on one hand, I know, because when you look at my results, or you look at things like, not everything I do, there's something that I'm genuinely rubbish at, but things that I do, I strive to succeed. And I use those successes as a way to drive me to the next one. And I always remember there was a school report I had once, and I read it, and it said in there, Lucy sets herself an exceedingly high bar. So I'm disappointed in myself, where others might have thought that, well, that's a success. If I haven't hit my own bar, I'm really disappointed in myself. And so that's the thing, is a kind of innate wanting to be better. But also, it's we're a product of our environments. We're a I lived in a family of performers. To have your voice heard in a family of people who perform, pretty hard. Bunch of
You're
people
going to
who,
have to shout loudest.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to be seen. And on one hand, it was that, in terms of making impact, and getting being the center of attention, because I'm in a room of people who love being the center of attention all the time. um and having that, I suppose, the discipline to keep practicing. So I also, when I was younger, I danced, and the discipline of working the technique, doing the exercise. You're not just doing the fun dancing, and you're doing all the prep work that goes up to it. That discipline, I think it's understanding that, and seeing those incremental gains. But I am just somebody, I think that you're a sum of your parts. I went to a very academically focused school. There was a lot of competition. So I've just always been in very competitive. I've done sports since I was a kid. I've always been,
Yeah.
I've always placed myself, or been in very competitive environments. So there's a part of me that is used to that competition. It drives me. Um, I mean, I'm doing an MBA at the moment, with all that free time I have, because I was like, yeah, sure, and it's that sort of thing of,
Throw another challenge on.
yeah, why not? Spin another plate, easy. And what's really interesting is when I started doing it, so I've nearly finished it now. When I started doing it, they said, oh, it's about 15 hours a week study. And most of it's done at the evenings and weekends. And I looked at that, I'm like, nah, it's not 15 hours, two. I'll get that done in two, no problem. And that's how my brain goes. I look at something and go, it's 15 hours. I bet I can find a way to do that in two. And I think that's just kind of part of who I am. It does make me a very difficult person to be around. Like, I'm never relaxed. So they like, if you spend any time around me, like the whole like sit down on a Sunday and chill out for a whole day, it's just not going to happen. It's like, right,
Yeah.
next project, let's go. What are we doing next? So there's obviously something in me which is this kind of need to move all the time, to be moving. I'm quite clearly neurospicy in some way, shape, or form. Like, there's obviously something going on.
It, it's so interesting just to hear that, because there's obviously, this anyway, but you can see there's so many characteristics and tools that have come from your childhood and business journey today, and it just completely makes sense when we look at how far Mazuma's come and the growth trajectory you've got on. All of those tools and characteristics have built you up to where we are today. So going back to what Stephen Bartlett always says, a Diary CEO, is that childhood experience and early, teenage years and early 20s really do form, as you said, you're a product of your environment,
Yeah.
and it's amazing to hear that, and you can see where Mazuma's got to where it has today.
It means I've spent a fortune on therapy over my life, but yeah.
Yeah. But before we do get to the here and now of where Mazuma is, and dive into more on the M&A side and other business growth, we spoke a lot about it last week at the Digital Accountancy Show. What was the main reason for you deciding to take on investment at the time you did for Mazuma, and why at that time seemed like the right juncture in which to do so?
Yeah, so it's a few things. The first is, I like to move quickly. It's really frustrating trying to grow a business at the rate of cash. To be able to make the right investment decisions without any runway is hard, and to invest in the right people and processes and all that kind of foundational stuff. The non-sexy stuff you don't get to see. It's not a glossy marketing campaign, but it's making sure that all of your internal billing systems work properly. Like, that's boring, but it's expensive. And that's the stuff that will allow you to scale. You've got to have capacity to spend money on that stuff. And that's very hard to do it at the rate of cash when you're trying to also service business. It's not like we had a business that was in a pre-revenue thing where we got to build a bunch of stuff and get it ready and then go to you test product market fit and then go, we were already trading. So we needed to, there had to be a step change if we wanted the business to go where we thought it could go. The next is that there's, I look at the market still, and I just think there's loads of opportunity there, and I want to go after it. And that either takes time or it takes money, and sometimes both. And having some money behind us to allow us to make those decisions and bring the right people in was really crucial. And also, Joe, it's another challenge. There's something about the accountability of having other people's money, which sharpens you as a leader. It's very easy it's very hard to get out of bed when you sleep in silk sheets. So having a little bit of, fire at your feet to push that behavior is no bad thing. And I can feel how much I've developed as a leader in the last kind of 18 months or so, since we've been going, or 2 years when you take into due diligence and pitching and all the rest of it, longer, in fact, 2.5 years probably. During that whole cycle, I can feel how much I have changed as a business leader. And I really enjoy seeing that in myself. And it's kind of a speed of development that I hadn't seen for years beforehand because I was a bit comfortable. So it's kind of all those things. But mainly, I think the market can be served better. And I think that I can do it.
And it's nice to hear that human element as well, because people just see the leader, right? They look at the black and white. Oh, this firm's taken on investment to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And as I know, obviously one of the main drivers for you on the process to take on investment was more technology based rather than M&A based, which it now is helping with. So on the technology piece, what was the main drivers there, and what was the vision?
So again, it's, we live in this world now with tech stacks and APIs everywhere and all the rest of it, and it's so easy to oversubscribe yourself to that stuff. and to also not use the system fully, and to not have something that's fit for purpose for you. Um, and we already had a really good working business model that we wanted to enhance and iterate on. And what existed out there wasn't going to allow us to do that. So it came down to, okay, this is the market we want to serve. This is how big the market is. This is how much efficiency we think we can deliver if we build something for ourselves, an internal engine that does that. It's like the Pentium core processor of what we do. If we can build that, then we could do X, Y, Z more quickly. And that's what we wanted to do, and eliminate a bunch of other stuff like not having control of our cost base and not having control of our roadmap or feature set. That's kind of what we wanted to build in it. It comes with its own, huge challenges to do that, but it's also, again, on the personal level, it's my chance to create something. I've really enjoyed working with our tech team because I get to create, and that's been really fun. I've really enjoyed that bit. And so seeing, Mazuma created something in the early days, seeing something I can continue to create through technology and the impact that that will make is a huge driver for me and for the business, obviously.
So Mazap was released, was it late last year or early this year? What was the time of?
Yeah, so we've been using it. So it's been in existence for a few years now, and the front side of it, in terms of what clients interact with, has been around for quite a few years now. The back end of it, V1, has been running for a good couple of years now. But now this next phase is about building more of an engine that does much more of that kind of day-to-day accounting work that is currently kind of sitting is partly in Mazap and partly in kind of legacy systems. It's the next phase of it to improve it, roll it out, iterate on it. So it's that we're doing. It's that continued development piece.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And it must have been such a steep learning curve for you as well, getting involved in that development
Yeah.
stage of the app, the technology,
Yeah.
and all of that around it.
Yeah.
But again, as you said, bring that on. I want to learn more. I'd like to go into another space.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I now know a decent amount about technology roadmaps and how you run that and how you run that team and how that process works and moving through that development cycle. Yeah, like that's things I didn't know 3 years ago, and now I do, and that's really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how, for your part of the market, and we'll come on to that a little bit more, but for your part of the market, do you feel that AI, technology and automation really speaks more to this micro SME business space than it would maybe larger corporates?
Yes and no. So it's definitely a tool that should be being used to handle these clients. In terms of what those clients do, they don't care about it at all. Our clients, micro businesses, businesses with fewer than 10 staff, they do not give a stuff about how their accounts get done. They do not care. All they want to know is they're not going to get fined by HMRC and that things are handled. And they don't pay too much tax. That's what they want. You could have all the bells and whistles and AI stickers and hoopla and confetti you want. They don't give a crap. They just don't care. So when I looked at how those businesses behave, I've been around a long time in this world now. I've been around nearly 20 years in this world. The behavior of small businesses in that time, despite all the technology, has not changed. And I'm going to put money on the fact that it won't change, because when you start a business, you go through the same learning cycle as everybody else. That learning cycle is evergreen. You start off this way, you make that mistake, you waste that money, you buy the wrong thing, you don't put your price up, you blah 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 blah. Same thing that every single business that starts will go through every single time, whether or not they have advice as well, because sometimes you have to make those mistakes in order to learn from them. In our market, they will continue to be scruffy, messy, pay for things out of whatever card they happen to have in their pocket, be ill-disciplined when it comes to keeping receipts or complying with things or getting stuff into your deadline. They're not going to change, because you know why? It's not a priority for them. It's a priority
Yeah.
for us. We want to get their tax return done on time. They don't care. They're not bothered. They'll come to it when they're ready. They're trying to run their own business. They've got their own stuff going on. So what we do is, instead of forcing them to jump through hoops, which if it's a larger business or in a scaling business, absolutely appropriate to get some good hygiene in there, 100% appropriate to get them hygienic in terms of their finances and all that kind of stuff. Totally agreed. For the area of the market that are not scale-up businesses, are lifestyle businesses, they're not going to change. So we have to meet them where they are. We need to stop expecting them to change their behavior. They won't, they can't. We need to meet them where they are. And that's what our technology build does, is we meet them, we come to them and get them to access it with as few barriers to entry as possible. Back to put it into a purple envelope and post it to us. It's as simple as that, basically, to use everything we do. Behind that is a behemoth of technology that does a load of fancy stuff. And the best way I can equate it, I'm not comparing myself to Amazon yet, but when you order a light, right, so your light goes out, my light goes out, and I need to order some light bulbs. I am going to take the path of least resistance, and I'm going to, for all my feelings about Jeff Bezos, I'm going to just go and order it on Amazon because it's easy and I don't have to leave my house. It will arrive probably by 10 p.m. tonight and or the next day. And all I see from that is great. My light's got a light bulb in it now. Fantastic. Actually, what's happened behind the scenes of that is logistics, is infrastructure, is technology, is all this stuff that we don't see. But the end result for me is I've got a light bulb. So saying I bought a light bulb is one thing, but actually seeing how it's delivered is another. And that's where Mazuma sits, is the end result is that micro business has the tax return done. That what goes on behind it is a bunch of other stuff that, little legs pedaling under the water level. Like, that's what it is, bunch of stuff that people will never ever see in order for us to be able to work at volume and at scale. Otherwise we can't do it.
That's so beautifully put, because I think you will know this as well. The amount of sole practitioners or small two-partner firms up and down the country that are struggling with this very challenge at the moment, especially with MTD coming down the line. They're like, we can't. I still have the builder that turns up and puts a stack of receipts on my desk. I can't retrain them or re-educate them to do things the way we want them to do. And as you just said, rather than trying to fight against them, it's meet them halfway, or at least get that convenience and just simplify it as best you can.
Yeah, the best thing you can remember, if you're an accountant listening to this, the best thing you can remember if you're working in that market, and I love that market, is why I continue to work them. I think they're some of the best people in the UK. I really do. I love them because they're the people we interact with every day, right? That's the plumber that comes to sort your bathroom out. That's the person who unblocks your drains. It's your window cleaner. It's your nail technician. It's your hairdresser. They're the people. That's your local coffee shop. They're the people we love. They're the people who do the most for our communities as humans, like on a human level. So I want to continue to work with them, but them having their finances neat in a piece of software, not a priority for them. They're worried about getting paid. They're worried about a customer service issue. They're worried about all this other stuff. They don't care about their finances, like bottom of their list, like just not a priority. So I have to meet them there. If I want them to get what they want out of their business, I have to meet them there. And that's what we have to do, is solving the problem, is the path of least resistance. And if it's so painful trying to get something to change, it's impacting your work. Do you know who's the problem? You.
Yeah, well put. So good segue actually into my next question I wanted to cover. So you've been a disruptor and always going against the grain. You've done that as well within the type of market that you look into, especially from an investment point of view. So we've got obviously all the big consolidators out there that are really concentrating the SME market and above. They're all going in this direction, and you've gone, no, I'm going this direction and going to concentrate on the very market that you just kind of outlined there.
Yeah.
How was that as well when you was having these investment discussions to get people to get on board with your vision of going against the grain?
I mean, you either like disruptors, you don't, and disruptors come inherently with more risk, because if you disrupt an industry, you have to be, you have to hope that people are going to like it, that it's going to be the thing that changes. And again, we're not just disrupting for the sake of disrupting. I'm not just being contrary. There are reasons for the way that we do things. In terms of looking at kind of our acquisition strategy, which wasn't really part of our initial business plan, but actually what it does do is, we've got this world at the moment. There's a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of roll up happening. And a lot of small firms have spent years trying to get their heads around tech stacks, have spent years trying to figure out how they serve a messy client base with all this new technology, are being squeezed because accountants are pathologically humble and don't want to put their price up because they're empaths and they feel for the clients, and they can see the client struggling. They don't want to charge them more money. They really struggle with all that stuff. Their cost base is going up. and they're not making any money. And then you've got consolidators on the other side, roll-ups going, yeah, great, we're really interested in firms exactly like yours, but you're not making enough EBITDA. To get your EBITDA to the level it needs to be, you're probably looking at 2 to 3 years of really hard work, some really rough decisions. And let's face it, those are things that you haven't done so far, right? So unless you are
Yep.
on that hockey stick thing and you've got a real business plan, you're bottoming out and going back up again. Um, if you're a steady state business and your turnover's been the same for years and years, basically, but like your profits being squeezed and squeezed, and you haven't made any decisions to address that, um, the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So what is it that's going to change about you to do that? So I looked at that market and I was like, right, for me, the value isn't actually in the profit of these firms because I don't really care if they're making a profit because I'm interested in their client base and some of their team who are going to be, and I'm going to be absolutely brutal here. We were on stage and lots of the panel were talking about culture fit and all the rest of it. At a higher tier, that's absolutely appropriate. If you're trying to bring in two large sets of workforces together and have them work together and mesh, yeah, culture fit and all that stuff, absolutely crucial. But for those smaller practitioners who have firms, up to, I know, 750K or so, you're likely to be a
Okay.
very small team. You're likely to, in the market we're working in, probably not making that much profit, because that tends to be what I see. And you're thinking, oh, do you know what? All the firms which were going to buy me have now been bought by somebody else. And I thought I was going to get 1 to 1.5 times GRF, but actually that's not really a thing anymore because we're not being valued on GRF. We all seem to have forgotten we have to make a profit somewhere along the line. This firm is all it's doing is I'm doing all this hard work and it's just paying me a mediocre salary. Like, how do I get out of this space? How do I get out of there? And you're faced with two options. You can continue to run it forever till you retire, or you can really work hard for 3 years and hope that the consolidation market is still there at the time you're ready to sell. You can take a price now that is below what you'd hope for, but does get you out the door. Or we built a model whereby we don't do those big upfront payments. We don't, but we purchase the client base of a firm slowly over a 3-year basis. And we do it in a way that structures a growth and doesn't have clawbacks. But we look for firms whereby we can make efficiencies. So if you're the founder of that firm, you're going to be getting your 1+ times GRF over that 3-year period. Anyway, by the nature of the way that we do those deals, yes, if that client base shrinks and we can't replenish it, yeah, it's going to go down too. But that's true of, as you know, you've got clawbacks in most deals. So it's no different. We're just doing it in a slightly softer way. But we're doing it in a way that gives an element of control as well. So, people can exit, principals can remain involved. Every deal is slightly different. But what it does is it allows us to integrate systems. So we've got a really comprehensive onboarding, AML, client billing system. It's all centralized. So suddenly you spent a load of your time as that firm owner, time and money doing admin, sorting out phone systems, sorting out your website, dealing with chasing clients for money, billing, all that kind of stuff. Suddenly all that's disappeared. And actually you get to focus on doing the thing you love doing, which is delivering work to clients. And you're realizing the value of your firm over 3 years anyway. So it's kind of, you're going to end up in a more certain end position at the end of it than you potentially would if you had to wait 3 years to grow your firm to get those kind of the growth numbers to show that EBITDA to sell in a more classic sense. So yeah, that's how we structure it. That's what we do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing, especially at the market that you're speaking to, the end of the market you're speaking to, a lot of practitioners do not realize there is value in their business.
Yeah,
They go down the route, as you kind of alluded to earlier on, of, well, I'll just get to the end of my working days and then I'll just start going to the local accountants. Oh, do you want to look after this client for me? Would
yeah,
you like to? When you're like, guys, you've worked and put your heart and soul into this
yeah,
for however many years you've been in the profession for, and you're just going to let it go without realizing
yeah,
any value at all in the business.
yeah,
So that's, definitely one positive in the way you structure your deals. But going back to the clawback conversation, as you said, if the client base does go down from revenue wise, then of course there's going to be clawbacks. But at least within your particular model, you don't have to have those horrible conversations or go through that legal side of
yeah,
untying everything and going, right, yes, well, look, you've lost 25,000 worth of revenue here, or GRF, so we're going to have to do £1.20 down for every pound. It's
yeah,
just we pay you out what we've been paid
yeah.
over the course of the 3 years.
Yeah, but exactly that. And It gives an opportunity for us to streamline things. We can, we're not having to duplicate costs in terms of duplicate software costs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, um, it also allows staff, we know that recruiting's hard in the industry. It allows staff, we are a slightly bigger organization than a lot of these smaller firms. Staff get some lateral movement if they want. They're exposed to different things. There's a bit more kind of career development for them in there as well. They get to be part of bigger teams. There's that sort of stuff. So I think it's a for me it works really well as a model. It works really smoothly. Full disclosure, there's always some teething problems because every deal there always is. There's always some getting to know each other when you start dating and kind of you figuring
Of
out all that
course,
kind of stuff.
of course. Yeah.
But actually, once everything settles, easy peasy. It's nice, and you're sat there going, "Oh, great! I'm getting a load of money every month that I was more importantly that I wasn't having before." So that's really
Yep.
nice.
Yeah, I think some people just see it like, especially if they do retire after 6 months or 12 months, that they've for a couple of years after that, they've still got some sort of form of income
Yeah,
and salary coming in. That's the way they view it as a salary as such coming in.
yeah.
So no, it works well from that perspective. Um, so people wise, we talked a bit about culture there. Um, Obviously, I know in terms of your model, you've got people dotted around the country. So how do you bring that team together and make people feel part of Mazuma family and a Mazuma setup? What sort of challenges have you come across? What things have you put in place to help bring that culture together?
Yeah, so we've got our head office is in Bridgend, and anybody who's local kind of works hybrid. So we do have a degree of people who are kind of in that head office regularly. We've got, people who are in our senior leadership team or ELT, they'll be in for meetings regardless of where you're in the UK. So there's a little bit of traveling sometimes as well. But we also, we have our events. So we have usually our summer barbecue and our kind of kickoff for the year where people come together. And then it's about having access to your team. So really simple things, making sure that you're staying in touch with people on your Teams channel and you're booking kind of your one-to-ones and your face-to-faces and stuff like that's the real thing is just spending time and getting to know people. Um, I do like it when people get together and you get that kind of buzz and vibe. And you find if you do that on a semi-regular basis, that's enough to carry people through to the next thing. So, yeah, and really, people who thrive with us are people who get it. They're into the model. They like the way that we work. They're excited by the kind of pace of things, and it is pacey. And it's I think it's generally it's a pretty fun working environment. Obviously, like any company there are times that are challenging, but I always say the challenges of working for a scaling company are definitely there, but they are way more interesting and palatable than the challenges of working for a shrinking company. And that's then pick your hard.
Around flexibility and the remote part of how your team work as well, was that there pre-COVID or was COVID more of a catalyst to get to that stage?
We did do a good degree of that. Again, we've always worked with, we've always employed women who typically maybe couldn't go back into that accountancy, old world 9 to 5 environment because they wanted to do child or elder care. Um, so we've worked with people in a flexible way, either through working hours or through location. COVID's definitely accelerated, obviously, I think like it has for everybody.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, like as for everyone, now it's about getting that balance. I think we all lived in a world for a little bit where we thought, I never have to go to an office again. Like, this is great. I can work from my desk forever. Actually, we are, even if you're people might be surprised to know that I am a huge introvert. I'm a massive introvert. Even if you are an introvert like me, you still do, glean energy from interacting with people face to face every now and again. And it's an important part of being human and part of a kind of cultural society to do that once in a while. Now it's about finding out what's the middle ground here. Where's the landing space that it works for everybody, and that's kind of what we're working with. And I think it's going to continue to evolve as the world evolves and as the world gets smaller. I think that we're going to we have to be open to that working pattern continuing to evolve.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a huge advocate myself for that face-to-face interactions. We've all got to be flexible. Life
Life
happens.
happens, yeah.
Um, life happens. But yeah, having that face to face, I think is super important for culture and that team cohesion, for sure. And just sticking with the people and team side for a second there, what part of the journey in Mazuma did you start to put in place non-fee earning individuals that were concentrating on certain, because that's always a big step for an accountancy
Yeah,
practice owner, is to, because psychology has always been, we need fee earners in place to be fee earning. But
yeah,
actually, when they do make that step, they realize having those non-fee earning individuals adds just so much value.
yeah. It was probably only a couple of years in, to be honest, because you start realizing, how I'm paying this person for doing that, and I've just watched them spend half a day doing admin. Like, that's not making us any money. Could I? And again, my brain always goes, well, that's an expensive way of getting admin done. So is there somebody I could hire to do that and then free up their time to bring in more capacity for them to do it? So probably only a couple of years in, I was always very keen to get rid of the sales element. Like, I didn't want me to be the person selling, because people learn your name then. And because I was also able to do the accountancy aspect of it, it's very easy to give too much away, as in give away free advice. And that role, then very quickly you find that you become the only point of contact for everything. And that's very, very difficult. So we kind of started getting rid of that sales piece. Again, I'd say probably after kind of maybe 5 years or so. We learned a lot of lessons. We hired some people, we took it back, we kind of split it between different people. But eventually now, we do have a sales team. I've got marketing. We have a whole admin team that works alongside the operations, is the accountancy team. Um, so that it's getting the people. It's that analogy, isn't it? Get the people on the bus and then find the right seat for them. And that's what we need to do. It's not all going to work if everybody wants to drive, but if you have everyone in the right seat, it will all work out. And that's kind of how I always want to think. Whenever we have, if I have scope creep, or I call it side quests, people go off on side quests doing things. I'm like, is that your job? Why are you doing that? That's a waste of money. I'd rather you focus over there, please. People love a side quest. It's bringing people back to that focus constantly. Otherwise, you end up kind of very quickly, you can veer off. If you're going quickly as well, you can very quickly veer off course. It's constantly, my job seems to be constantly wrangling people back to facing
Yep.
forwards and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, I've repeated this so many times because for me, it seems weird about the accountancy practice sector. In any other business, any other sector, you would have the experts in place. You'd have a marketing director, you'd have a finance director, you'd have someone that's concentrating on HR, whatever
Yeah.
it may well be within the business. But for so long, accountants have gone, well, no, I can wear all those hats.
Yeah.
We could drive the business forward. And now, as we're seeing, especially I think with private equity investment coming into the market, people are starting to act more of a business rather than an accountancy practice as such.
Well,
And
because
then
it
now started to put these non-fee earning individuals in place to build that infrastructure to allow the accountants and fee owners to best serve their clients.
because it's a business. If if
Yes.
if if,
Yep.
if you
Absolutely.
if you start a business, your role there is not just to create a job for yourself. It's to build a business. Unless, of course, what you want to do is just the accounting and tax work, and that's what you as an individual want to do. In which case, you do that, but then you're probably not looking at kind of scale and growth in terms of what you do. You're probably looking at kind of maintaining a client base. Any that you churn, you replace, and you go in steady state. That's also fine. Nothing wrong with that. Like, that's great. Um, there are days where I'm like, why didn't I just do that? Like, this is stressful. This is hard work. Like, why didn't I just do that? But yeah, if you're building a business, and it's not an accountancy practice, it's a business. If you're building a business, you need those support systems around you. Otherwise, you'll never reach any amount of scale.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, look, before we wrap up the conversation, Lucy, as we know, the last few years, the accountancy practice industry has just been evolving at a rapid pace. Technology, private equity investment coming in, all the different challenges and dynamics that we're seeing with, lack of succession, talent, regulatory admin, getting heavier and heavier, that
Yeah.
burden specifically. I have lots of conversations with practitioners that, right across the ecosystem, different echelons within the accountancy practice space. A lot of them are possibly confused at this moment or not sure which route to take. Do I stay as I am? Do I merge? Do I sell?
Mhm.
Uh, so for people that are maybe just taking a step back and reflecting on their pathway now, what words of advice would you say to them in terms of taking stock of their situation and how they would make a decision on, do you know what, maybe now is time for me to join forces with a Mazuma, for example, or another firm with that infrastructure around and the technology in place. Yeah, talk us what you would think on that thought process would look like.
I think something I've really noticed is don't underestimate the value of a bird in the hand. You know, I think that we all live in this world where it's not quite sunk cost fallacy, but it's a similar kind of belief system that you think, yeah, but I spent however many years building this, and I just wish it was worth more. So if I just hang on another 3 years, maybe it will be worth more. And do you know what? Maybe it will. Or maybe you have to do a load of work to get it there. Do you have the energy? Do you have the capability and willing? Because it's one thing saying we're all spreadsheet millionaires, right? We can all write a plan and stick it on paper. The execution is the hard bit here. It's do you have the willingness to do that and for it to be really difficult, and also accept that there are macroeconomic factors that will impact the value of your business as well.
Absolutely.
You can't control what you can't control. Like, it's out there. If HMRC turn around tomorrow, the government turns around tomorrow and goes, screw it, no one has to do a tax return anymore, that's it. Your business has suddenly lost all its value overnight. Look at all those companies that, with the advent of ChatGPT, suddenly lost all their value overnight because something came in and blew them out of the water. So if you're at a place where you're like, do you know what? I'd really like to kind of call this quits in 3 years, and I just want to do this. Start having a conversation with someone like me and start scoping out what that could look like. Don't underestimate a bird in the hand, because it might not be that big old dream you've thought about, and maybe in 3 years you might look back and go, it's worth more now, shoot. But actually the opposite could quite well be true, and sometimes you just have to take your wins, and know that there is way more to life than just those numbers, and that actually does it give you the other things in life that you want, free time back, a bit of financial freedom, ability to do something else, whatever it looks like, even just bandwidth and mental load. Like, if you are stressed out and it's affecting your mental health, is it worth it for an extra 50 grand at the end of it? Probably not. Would you, if you got to the end of your life and in 3 years' time, someone said to you, right, sorry, today's the day you die, and you think, oh God, I spent my last 3 years like being really stressed. And they said, or you could pay 50 grand and not have felt the stress for the last 3 years. You pay it in a second. Like, you pay it in a second. And it's thinking about that. It's just thinking about kind of the temptation is always to hang on in case something better comes along. Actually, a part of this is knowing where you sit in the landscape and going, this is a good decision for me right now. And I will sort of say there's kind of no such thing as a wrong decision, because you make the decisions based on the information you have in front of you. You make the best decision you're capable of making based on the information put in front of you at the time.
In that moment.
Yep. That's all any of us have. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But actually, as long as you can sleep at night knowing you made the best decision you were capable of making at that point in time, that's it.
That exact scenario you just described is one that I often get with a lot of practitioners, where I might as well carry on for 3 years, James, if I'm going to get that. And then all those points you mentioned, but also on top of that, the one phrase that comes time and time again is, well, I was just about to implement this, and actually I was going to grow the business by 50% more every year for the next. And you kind of have to sit back, and for someone like myself, and you've probably had this conversation, is you're at the point in your career, often, in the autumn years, the people that we're speaking to, if you were going to have done that with your business, you probably would have done it by now.
Yeah.
And it's just that being on that precipice of going, well, actually, I could have done this. I probably can do this. And that what if, and as you said, people have got to actually realize the work and effort that's got to go into that to change that round. And really, ultimately, if you were going to do it, you probably would have done it a good few years back.
Yeah. 100% that. And look, I'll be really honest here. I had a conversation with a guy who said exactly that. He's like, well, I'm just going to carry on then because I can get it to grow in the next 3 years. He was 75.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you want to spend 3 years in your 70s doing that? Like, really?
Yep.
I mean, if you do, great, more power to you. But do you really want to do that? Or are you hung up on this idea of what something should be worth? And therefore, it's really difficult.
And at that point, if you're 75 and you've got a couple of staff, they're going to be looking at you going, this guy's going to be going soon. They could leave, and then you've got no staff there to do the work. So there's loads of different factors that will come into play.
So many factors, and we can't always control like I said, we've got the micro that we can control, the internal stuff, but there's macroeconomic things we can't control. Look at the stock market. As we're recording this, what's happening over in the US is massively impacting the stock market. If you've got stocks and things, I'm sure pretty soon my pension fund's probably taken a hit over the last kind of few weeks.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
can't control that, so I can't rely on that, and I can't. Some of these are a long-term thing. You're gonna have to wait it out. But if it's your business and you have believers, just bird in the hand, always, always.
Yep. Lucy, I've been looking forward to this conversation, and it hasn't disappointed. Thank you very much for giving us your time. I know you're a busy lady as well, so really, really appreciate that. It's been so interesting to hear your story from the start and kind of a lot of the adversities that you had to fight through. But also for me, we've spoken quite a bit, but to really hear that human element of what has been driving you, and I can now see why you've made the certain decisions that you have, but why ultimately you've achieved what you have as well. So really, really appreciate it. I'm sure the guys that tune into M&A Diaries will be looking forward to hearing this one as well.
No, thanks for having me on and let me ramble at you for an hour. It's been great.
Thanks, Lucy. Appreciate it.
Cheers, James.